When summer lies upon the world, and in a noon of gold, beneath the roof of sleeping leaves, the dreams of trees unfold. When woodland halls are green and cool, and wind is in the west, come back to me. Come back to me and say my land is best.
Greetings and well met, my friends. I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth in this grand new year. Today we will be talking about some of the ideas of what happened to the Entwives in Middle-earth, even to the sorrow of the Ents who cannot find their wives. Now there is no clear and direct answer to this question, for it is one of the many enigmas in Tolkien's works, but I will do what I can to provide my best guesses as to where they went. Please check out the links and videos in the description below and the cards above, for they helped and or are related to the topic at hand. A shout out specifically to Tolkien Gateway for their clear and concise article on the Entwives. It helped greatly in the making of today's video. Now thank you all for joining me. Let's begin our tale, my friends. As we all know about the Ents and Prebeard, or Fangorn as he is also called, they are some of the eldest beings in the world, created by Yavanna the Vala, and taught to speak by the elves of the Elder Days. They were created sometime around, and probably after the creation of the elves, so indeed they were old, far older than most others in Middle-earth and Beleriand. So the times in which the Ents and their wives grew distant were vast indeed. So before we get to where the Entwives went exactly, let us better understand how the Entwives differed from the Ents themselves. According to Prebeard in the Two Towers, Ents were more concerned with the larger trees of the forests, wild woods, and slopes of hills, while the Entwives had a mind for smaller trees, plants, grasses, and vegetables, many of which they could control and give order to in gardens. So the Entwives made such gardens indeed, and the Ents went on wandering and came to the gardens seldomly. The hearts of the Ents and their wives did not grow in the same way. Thus, there came a time when the Entwives, one of them being Fimbrethil of Wandlim the Light-footed, the wife of Prebeard, crossed the Anduin River to make new gardens. They crossed at the time of the darkness in the north, most likely referring to Morgoth and his wars in the First Age on the Free Peoples. After the darkness was overthrown at the end of the First Age, the gardens beyond the Anduin blossomed richly, and they were full of corn. The Entwives would even teach men the ways of their agriculture in such a time, and the men honored the Entwives, while they knew only legends of the husbands of the Entwives deep in the forests. But darkness would come into the land, and Sauron destroyed those lands in the Second Age, and they were thereafter named the Brown Lands. In the Fellowship of the Ring, it is said no living grass, nor broken tree, or bold stone even remained in the vastly desolate place, and all was grey and withered, as if a fire had come there. Quote, "What pestilence, or war, or evil deed of the enemy had so blasted all that region? Even Aragorn could not tell." End quote. The 2 points of view concerning the Brownlands that we get from Prebeard and Aragorn make a sorrowful point concerning the land's utter devastation and ruin. Prebeard remembers it from long ago, for in a time of war between Sauron and the Men of the Sea, the War of the Last Alliance, he longed to see Fimbrethil, his wife, once more, and when the Ents crossed over the Anduin, they found a desert, for the lands were burned and uprooted, and war had passed over it. The Entwives were not there, and the Ents searched for them, asking folk if they had seen them. Some said the Entwives had gone west, or east, or south, while others had not seen them at all. But the Entwives could not be found, and the Ents eventually returned to their woods, seeking their wives from time to time, and the elves made songs of such sorrow, and I recited a verse from one of those songs at the beginning of the video. The Ents thereafter believed that they would find their wives eventually, and settle in a land together to both be content, but Prebeard said that that may only be after both the Ents and their Entwives had lost everything. So that is what we have to go off of from the books. Now for some possible explanations as to where the Entwives went. It may be possible that the Entwives had gone beyond their gardens east of the Anduin, and survived the catastrophe of the Brownlands, and whatever terrible force Sauron brought to bear there. Halfast Gamgee, an uncle of Samwise, claimed to have seen an elm-like tree man walking in the north moors of the Shire before the War of the Ring. That may have been an Entwife indeed, but we cannot be sure, especially if it may have been a fabricated legend within the context of the story itself, and it didn't actually happen. Besides, I feel that with the existence of Old Man Willow in the Old Forest, and the former existence of the Ents in East Beleriand during the First Age, it's more likely to me, at least, that any living trees in that part of Eriador would have been Ents, or even more likely, Huorns, but not Entwives. Huorns were more tree-like creatures than Ents were, like Old Man Willow. Perhaps the ancestors of the hobbits of the Shire had some interaction with the Entwives in an age past, as the hobbits originated near the northern Anduin, and the Entwives had taught men their crafts near the Anduin River. And indeed, hobbits loved farming and the earth, but that is likely as far as that connection goes between the hobbits and the Entwives, beyond possible myths and legends of old passed on in the unknown stories of the hobbits. Maybe some of the Entwives did in fact go south or west or east, or even to the Shire, and survived the destruction of the Brownlands, but unfortunately I feel that is doubtful. In a darker sense, they may have survived indeed, but have been enslaved and brought into the east or south to do agriculture for the servants of Sauron, but that would not have been a good existence. However, the most likely explanation of what happened to the Entwives is that they were destroyed, along with the Brownlands, by some unknown force of Sauron, possibly through fire or pestilence, or some great upheaval through labor, or even some mixture of all these things. Indeed, why else would Sauron have so utterly destroyed the Brownlands during the war, if not to harry the agriculture and provisions of the West, making a no-man's land of sorts? And he would surely have found great delight in destroying their allies in the Entwives. Those are some of my speculations on that theory, at least. In the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, more specifically in letter 144, Tolkien states, quote, "I think that, in fact, the Entwives had disappeared for good, being destroyed with their gardens in the War of the Last Alliance, Second Age 3429 through 3441, when Sauron pursued a scorched earth policy, and burned their land against the advance of the allies down the Anduin. Volume 2, page 79 refers to it. They survived only in the agriculture transmitted to men and hobbits." End quote. Since this portrays the thoughts of Professor Tolkien himself, it is our most likely explanation. It is possible that the Entwives survived, as there is always hope, but I believe it is most likely that the Entwives were destroyed by Sauron during the War of the Last Alliance near the end of the Second Age. It would align with the idea that the greatest evils and foes in the world destroy that which is green, natural, and beautiful, such as Morgoth turning Ard Galan into the desert of Enfauglith. However, even by the end of his life, Tolkien still did not have an answer for this question, as in letter 338 he says, quote, "As for the Entwives, I do not know. I have written nothing beyond the first few years of the Fourth Age. It is plain that there would be, for Ents, no reunion in history, but Ents and their wives, being rational creatures, would find some earthly paradise until the end of this world, beyond which the wisdom neither of elves nor Ents could see. Though maybe they shared the hope of Aragorn, that they were not bound forever to the circles of the world, and beyond them is more than memory." End quote. Thus, there is no clear answer concerning the question of what happened to the Entwives. But still, Prebeard retained hope, and implored Merry and Pippin to send him word if they heard any news of the Entwives in their lands. Without the Entwives, there would be no more Entings, and the Ents and their wives would fade from the world. But I like to imagine that there are Ents and Entwives with their mother Yavanna in the Undying Lands, and that maybe, in the deep parts of forests or in far-off gardens, there may yet still be Ents and Entwives in such places. From this exploration of what happened to the Entwives, we see a clear idea. We must keep safe that which is beautiful and natural in the world, and we must watch over such things, for if we do not, a sad and terrible ruin may come to them. That which is most evil will destroy such things, if we do not hinder that evil. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you all enjoyed this episode, sad as it was. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts, questions, additions, and corrections about what happened to the Entwives? Please let me know in the comments below. Since we do not have a clear answer to this question, let me know your theories and speculations about the Entwives as well. Also, please check out our music channel, Facebook, Twitter, merch, and Patreon. Links are in the description below. My friend Royan and I just did a podcast on Patreon where we ranked the Silmarillion characters in a tier list based on who we favor and disfavor. It was actually quite a fun one to do. If you're interested, please consider joining us on Patreon. A huge thanks to our Valar tier patrons, a shout out to Adrian De La Tour, Chris Ortner, Peter Shepard, and Kyle Wetzel. Thank you guys so much for your support for the channel, it means so much to me. Finally, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today. I'll see you all again next week with a special video. I'm going to try to make a video that generally outlines the entirety of the history of Arda, from the music of the Ainur into the Fourth Age. Hopefully it will help explain the history in a very broad and general sense, as we continue to explore the history and lore of Middle-earth in a more in-depth way in our other videos, but I'm excited for this one, and I'll see you all then. As always, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my great friends.